Hello everybody and welcome to StarNet Link, and today we're going to be doing space lesson number 14, which is someone suggested that I should do a video about the Anunnaki and basically go into greater detail about the Anunnaki Empire and explain like the information of that I know, and hopefully like this will sort out information or confusion of what people think the Anunnaki are. Now, the only reason why I'm talking about this is because with my galactic origin story, if people were following my YouTube channel, would know that part of my galactic history is connected to the Anunnaki. I'm not directly related to them on my galactic origins by blood, but usually through marriage. Through marriage, Inky married my cousin, my galactic cousin, and they had a kid. That kid is my cousin who works alongside my crew on my mothership, which is known as the Janirda and the Scimitar. That cousin's name is known as Dolkova. Dolkova is a Anunnaki hybrid between an Andromedan and a Anunnaki. And Dolkova is a defector from the Anunnaki Empire. He does not associate with the Anunnaki Empire whatsoever. He disowned them or disclaimed them from his origins, and he had to go through proper paperwork and proper procedure for that in order to happen. He's been working very closely with the Palladians, other galactic beings, including the Sirians, the Arcturians, and some reptilian species, to dismantle some of the Anunnaki systematic stuff that has been going on around the galaxy. He's also been working very closely on this planet and trying to get rid of some of the technology or bad technology that has been left behind, as well as trying to dismantle the Anunnaki systematic stuff that has been going on in this planet for a very, very long time. When we talk about the Anunnaki Empire, you have to understand that there are defectors. And I've been doing some intense research on this, and I do believe that the people who are praising the Anunnaki in some sort of form are praising the ones that are defectors and not really part of the Anunnaki Empire. If they actually did the research and actually studied what the Anunnaki actually did across the galaxy, you wouldn't be wanting to praise them. Vast majority of the galaxy does not want to associate with them or work with them. And a true starseed that works with the Galactic Federation and the ambassador, you really should not be worshiping these people or this kind or this race that had basically been enslaving many different races and causing many different turmoils all across the galaxy. The other thing that you need to know is that if we're worshiping a race that is essentially our enslavers, this shows the Galactic Federation that we're not ready to ascend into being galactic citizens or getting out of this ascension cycle or this bad ascension cycle that we are in, because we're basically worshiping enslavers, meaning that we don't know our true origins. We don't know ourselves fully enough to be part of the Galactic Federation or part of our galactic community. So let's talk about the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are not directly come from this solar system or this reality that we live in. They actually came from the Andromedan galaxy, from a wormhole, from an alternate density and alternate reality, similar to us, but completely different. The issue with that is that the Time Lords have been trying to work with the Anunnaki Empire to get them to go back home, back to their reality. But due to the fact that you can't destroy or get rid of a race due to their impact, is because they're from an alternate reality. They don't know how it will affect this reality and the other reality if they don't go back to their home reality, which can cause time problems or vortex problems, issues all across the galaxy if they get rid of the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki have repeatedly refused to hand over systematic formulas from their ship logs to figure out exactly their navigation of where they were in the Andromedan galaxy. They have refused over and over and over again to give over those navigation logs or to figure out where exactly they are, because they have been, or the people that came through or the colony ship have declared that this is their home and that they have been lost, that their race basically deems them as being dead, so that they don't really need to go home, but they do need to go home. And the Time Lords can actually send them back to the exact point of time when they actually went through the wormhole. So that is a whole debacle and a whole discussion. But they have been trying to get the Anunnaki to do that so they can actually go back home to their home reality. Now, one of the things that you have to understand is that the Anunnaki do have a caste system. And this caste system is based on the skill set level of what your parents were. Meaning that if your father was a janitor, chances are that your mother must be a housekeeper or some sort of low meaningful worker, like a customer service person. And then you would be in that caste system as well when you're born into it. The only way for a Anunnaki to get out of the caste system that they were born into is either, number one, they marry up into the caste system in order to learn the social etiquettes in order to move up for marriage, or that they have to showcase their skill set. Like they have to go through and get an assessment or a test to be done about their skill set, and they have to prove to the testers that they can be an engineer or a mechanic or a technician. And they do this through series of tests and through series of schooling and stuff. So there is a way to get out of the caste system. What a lot of people don't understand is that there was a huge gender debacle between the Anunnaki, due to the fact that vast majority of them, or the colonists that came through the ship that went through the portal, they were going through a gender debacle, meaning that they were going through gender equalities, meaning that the males and females were fighting to see who was more powerful or who could take control over their empire or their ship that they were in. The ship that came through was a mothership, so there were about 5 to 5 million Anunnaki on that mothership that was exploring deep space when they entered into that wormhole or that other alternate reality that they were from. Therefore, because of this, the male population decided to take over control than what their entire culture normally is. According to records and according to defectors, that the vast majority of the Anunnaki race is systematically run by females. The females run the government structure and more of the civilian sectors, including medicine and medical and resources, including like agriculture and stuff. And the males do more of the heavy labor, including building, construction, military, and everything else. They mostly do that. That is how it is split in their culture. The Anunnaki somewhat do have a, I guess, royal family, but they don't really have a royal family. The reason why Inky and Enlil were so prevalent is because Inky was the captain of the ship that went through the portal, and Enlil was the co-captain to his brother. So they both ran the mothership that went through the portal that they were from. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand that, but that is the information of what I know, is that Enki was the captain of the mothership and Enlil was the co-captain. Now, there has been discussion, and some of the family members, including Enki's own mother, has defected from the Anunnaki Empire, and also including their middle sister as well has defected from the Anunnaki Empire because they have seen the atrocities that the Anunnaki did. The Anunnaki, what they did in order to take over planets is one of the things that they did. Number one, they would go to a planet and they would scope out the entire planet, like understand what the culture was at the time and understand what the natives look like. And you will see, because I will do a demonstration, I'll give pictures, that everybody, when they think about Anunnaki, this is what they look like. You have to understand that the Anunnaki were very good at disguising themselves. The Anunnaki do not look like this. This race is an avian race that was depicted, that works for the Anunnaki, that took over the idea that they were Anunnaki. A lot of the ancient scriptures, or a lot of the ancient texts, some of it was planted here to derail us from understanding our own origins of our own truth. But the Anunnaki do not look like this. This is an avian race. And if you've been following my videos, you will understand that this avian race came from my home planet of Korvania that basically rebelled and started working for nefarious purposes because they thought that they could become more powerful, just like the Anunnaki. And they started to become closer related. So this avian race took over the duties of the Anunnaki that were supposed to. So that's the reason why they're depicted as the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki do not look like this. Now, why would the Anunnaki not show themselves or show their true form? Well, if you have a native race that that you're enslaving, do you really want them to know who you actually are? Because if they figure out who they are, the more that they can understand and overthrow you or to rebel. So one of the ways that they do is to confuse you. And that if you don't know who your slavers are, you're never going to become free. You're never going to break out of that system. So yes, they would use holographic projection, and I have seen this happen with other reptilian beings, where they have holographic generators to make them look like they are the natives or the skies. A lot of ET races do this. Even our own military has cloaking devices. So it's extremely common for them to do this, and it's common knowledge that you wouldn't go to a planet that you're trying to conquer and showcase your true form to them, because if you do, then they would start to develop, that you're evil, you don't look like us, you're evil. So one of the ways to order to conquer a race is that you want to look like a race that is similar looking to them in order to establish some sort of friendship. The more that you look like the race that you're going to conquer, the less likely that they're going to think that you are evil, think that you're bad and stuff, that you are a friend. So yes. So just to clarify, this is not what the Anunnaki look like. The Anunnaki also do not look like this. This is a completely and utterly different race. This was a humanoid race that was completely different than the humanoid race, but they are real. They used to work for the Anunnaki Empire. And because of that, they had a very close relationship with these people until they started to figure out that they started to become evil or corrupt. So they rebelled. They're no longer here, but they had such a tremendous influence on this planet because they were very good at telekinesis or telepathic communication. they were teaching humans how to develop their telekinesis skills and actually learn from the humans, because the humans had a very unique skill, which that we could literally manifest stuff into physical reality. Like, for an example, you wanted gold, you could use your mind and literally manifest gold in your hands. And we could also change the landscape. A lot of ET races don't have this skill set, so they were trying to learn from the Theta race how to do this. They were trying to learn from Lemuria. But you have to understand that Lemuria and Atlantis and the rest of Earth was like an onion. You had certain parts like Atlantis and Lemuria that were highly advanced, and when you started to go outside of the city, you'll start to see that there were other humans that weren't as advanced as Atlantis and Lemuria. So, and it's still seen today that you will see that certain parts of the globe here, like certain countries, are more developed than others. It was the same thing back then. But the Anunnaki do not look like this. They are a completely different race. So what exactly do the Anunnaki look like? Well, the closest recommendation would be from Lane's Neon's book, Gift from the Stars, where she has the depiction of the Anunnaki. That is the closest rendition of what an Anunnaki looks like. But for people who haven't read the book, I'll try to give a sort of picture to analyze. So this is the closest picture of the skin tone of what Anunnaki would look like. You will see that the facial structure is muscular, but the face would not be in the face of a square. It would be more like an oval, like a gray. The eyes would look exactly like this when looking at an Anunnaki, but they wouldn't look as humanoid. They would look somewhat humanoid, but they would have more of an oval shape of the eyes, but they will look definitely like this. And their face and stuff will look similar to a human, but they would have musclars or stuff like the body shape similar to a gray, closely related to an Orion. That is also the other reason why the Greys started working very closely with the Anunnaki, was because the Anunnaki look very similar to the Greys from the Orion group. Now, Inky and Enlil are not hybrids of the Orions. They just look very similar to the Greys. And that's the reason why the Greys started working with them. The difference between the Anunnaki and the Greys is that the Greys have a moral compass when it comes to genetic work. And that moral compass is that they wouldn't take two completely different species, like for an example, like a reptilian and a mammal race, and put them together. They wouldn't do that as a genetic experimentation, but the Anunnaki would to see what type of creature would be created during that genetic experimentation. What the Greys would do is that they would find a reptilian race that had, and another race would have some sort of component or some sort of hybrid race that would have some sort of closely resemble genetics to reptilian, to order to merge them together on a subatomic level or a very small molecule level, in order to mash these two creatures together in order to create another hybrid race. But they would never take two different species, like for an example, a whale and a zebra. They wouldn't do that for genetics experimentation. They just flat out will refuse because they don't want to make a mutant race. The Anunnaki were notorious for creating mutant races, so much so of their influence, which is what corrupted the Lemurian Empire. They were doing genetics experimentation, and genetics experimentation is also what is happening in the SSP. So the other thing that you need to know is that the Anunnaki was very good at not only disguising themselves, but also creating racial tensions between races. They would literally go into a race and look like the natives, but they would be a different skin tone or a different variation of what they look like, and they would cause racial tensions because they would favor a race that would look closely related to them and cause racial tensions. This is also the number one reason why I think that we have a huge racial tensions between blacks and whites and other races around the world, is because the Anunnaki started to favor light-skinned humans because they used to look very similar to the Anunnaki, and this is still prevalent today. They created racial tensions all across the entire galaxy amongst different races, to the point that races actually fought against each other and caused major bloodshed because of this. The Anunnaki are not friendly at all. They like to conquer, they love to experiment, and they love and feed off of the empowerment that they have. There are some Anunnaki that have defected and stopped doing that. But due to the fact that they have simulated so closely to this reality, they do not want to go home. And the more that they stay here, the more issues that they cause. And one of the things that I think that what they are also doing is that the Anunnaki does not believe in love marriages, meaning like twin flames, twin souls, and stuff like that. They don't believe in that aspect. They believe in arranged marriages based on certain personality and stuff. And sometimes they marry or go into arranged marriages in order to benefit families. It's never a love marriage, but they do have to produce a offspring in that marriage. If they don't, then the marriage is null, but they usually have to, in order to have some sort of family respect for their family, is to produce a child. They really don't favor whether the child is male or female, but when they want to conquer a race and to get them to follow them, they would try to favor a certain race. Now, the Anunnaki, and a lot of people might disagree about this, but the Anunnaki were notorious for interbreeding and mating with native humans. Now, a lot of people are like, well, the Anunnaki were extremely tall. And it's like, no, they weren't extremely tall. They weren't extremely tall at all. They were roughly around the same height as a regular human, around 6 feet to 7 feet tall, sometimes 8 feet tall. They were a little bit taller than the general population, and I do know that when you go to other countries, I think the average height is like 4 or 5 feet tall, and then other parts is like 6, 7 feet tall for a male. So they were the average height of an average human male. The reason why they built statues like that tall, is the same reason why we build statues today, to honor them, The steps that a lot of people are talking about, the big giant steps, those were for the giant races, and giants did exist. And I should do an entire completely different video about different fey creatures all across the planet that no longer exist here on this planet. But yeah, giants did exist here on this planet for some time until they started to become cannibals and started eating regular humans. There are stories of giants eating humans. But either way, the Anunnaki were the average height of humans, and they had a huge fetish for human women. The stories of the Greek gods, of Zeus, Hades, and stuff, that was all depicted of the Anunnaki. And the War of the Gods was the Galactic Federation trying to push the Anunnaki off of this planet, get them to stop influencing Earth. But they ended up creating a religion. But one of the ways that they tried to stop us from rebelling is by creating different religions. The Anunnaki was notorious for creating different religions in order to get a planet to not be unified. If we are unified as the human race, you don't know how powerful we will become as the human race. And a lot of races are really scared that if we unite as the human race, they're afraid that we would act just like our creators, just like the Anunnaki, and they don't want that. They want us to form a separate identity away from the Anunnaki. And that is what the huge issue is. And that's what all the talks is. They don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to know who exactly the Anunnaki are. They don't want to understand their culture. Now I do understand that when it came to the creation of the human race, Enki and Enlil had a very, very hard time trying to get the genetics to work for a male genetics in order to fuse with humans. So they used 3 different types of female DNA of Anunnaki to order to get the human race to where it was now, to fuse it into human DNA. So those 3 women are also the co-creators or the mothers of the human race. And Enki also infused his DNA. So technically the template for the human DNA is that there were 4 different Anunnaki that were genetics that were fused into the human DNA. So let's get into the elite family and why they're closer is why the Anunnaki created them in the first place. So everybody's talking about the elite family and how connected they are to the Anunnaki and all this. The number one reason why the Anunnaki created the elite family is because they literally started to mate or have hybrid children with human women, and that's how they became the elite family member. Over time, the psychic abilities or the abilities of the family can dilute over time when they start breeding outside the family or inside the family. So that's the reason why inbreeding was so very common amongst the elite and royals, is because they wanted to keep the Anunnaki blood pure so they can continue being closely related to their ancestors or to the Anunnaki. But they also didn't understand that they didn't understand the dangers of what happens when you start to inbreed. Now, the reason why they started doing inbreeding for the elite family is because they thought that they could inbreed because a lot of the reptilian species interbreed with themselves and there's no genetic issues with it. But you have to understand that the reptilian races live for a very, very long time. Some of them live for like 3,000 to 5,000 years, where the human race lives for like close to under 100 or close to 100 years. Like you can understand how fast we reproduce and how easily those genetics can deteriorate over time of how fast we reproduce. The reason why there's no issue with reptilians interbreeding is because they don't breed as fast as we do. They take their time with it and they don't really care. And because they have a much longer lifespan. And a lot of people need to understand that when we are talking about different galactic races, they live for a very, very long time. So some of the issues that we are dealing with, they might not have the correct approach or the correct way of dealing with it because they live for such a longer time. Some of the stuff that they talk about doesn't translate or transmute to human ways, like human understanding. Maybe some of it does, some of it doesn't. But you have to understand that a lot of these races live for a very, very long time, and some of their information or some of the stuff that they talk about doesn't transmute. And this is what was happening a lot with the Union, a lot over time. So they would bring information, bring techniques, but they didn't understand how short of a lifespan humans had at the time. And the Anunnaki did this on purpose because if you live for a really, really long time, the more smarter, the more time that you have to develop abilities to have time to think and rebel, basically. They did that on purpose so that we wouldn't rebel. So why was the Anunnaki so interested in the Stargate system? And why were they so obsessed with the blood sacrifices? The reason why the Anunnaki were so obsessed with coming to this planet is because they thought that they could use this planet as their new home, as their new Anunnaki home, because they were separated from their home world or from their other way, and Earth was closely related to their home. So there was a point of time where the Anunnaki was deliberately trying to terraform this planet to make it their new home. And sometimes they also knew that there must have, the way that Earth was like situated in the galaxy, they also thought that they could find their way home through Earth, through one of the stargates. And it also didn't immediately work. They also thought that they could take over the entire galaxy because of what Earth is. It's like a center hub of interdimensional portal line energy. So they literally thought that Earth could be their new home, but they also wanted it to be a station point for like all the races or all the different beings that rejected them or tried to rebel. They would just place them here as a little prison if their plan A didn't work. Well, plan A didn't work, so they ended up turning Earth into a prison planet, just like everybody says it was, until the Omega system was taken out. So hopefully this explains a little bit about who the Anunnaki are, what they are about. If I left anything out, let me know. Let me know if I missed anything. Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to donate, my donation link is in the description in my YouTube profile as well as my business email. So if you want to reach out to me, if you want to book a session with me, like if you are having ET contact and you need it to be figured out, or if you need a second opinion on readings, or if you want a reading done, or any type of contact that isn't related to ETs, but more on the paranormal or ghost side, or fae side, when it comes to paranormal, book a session with me. The session is $100 a day. I don't charge by the hour, just by the day, and it's just $100. And the extra 50 if you want it to be recorded. But thank you so much for the support. If you do donate to my channel, all my donations go to help me pay off some of my debts from school. Please like or share this video. Please share and like this video to other people that might be interested. I'd like to know what your thoughts are, but thank you so much for the support. And thank you so much for the video idea for someone who suggested it in my live stream. But thank you so much. And I hope this explains a little bit better about the Anunnaki.